want to start.
For the past couple of weeks, every Monday, the New Patriotic Party engages the media on various subjects, bringing the light to the Ghanaian, letting the good people of Ghana know the difference between light and darkness. Today, similar exercise will be done. But before we introduce the speaker, I would want to use this occasion to introduce some amazing dignitaries that we have here. We have in our midst Mr. Boahin Edu, who is the CEO of Cocoa Board. Please give it to him. They are making my hometown people enjoy Brekum and the Ahafo area there. When you go there, he's a king. They enjoy his efforts and the contribution that he's making to this wonderful country of ours. We have the manager at his office, who is Mr. Fufi Kwafu. We all know him over the years. He's a friend of the media. Mr. Fufi Kwafu, so let's give it up to him. I've seen my brother Kofi Ejapon, who is a deputy communication director, helping manage things out there. And I've seen my brother David Asante of Let My Vote Count Fit, and he's still counting the votes. Yes, Ghana published. When you go there, he's doing some amazing job out there. It tells you the sort of human beings and materials that we have within this great party. We have the Director of Communication. Yeah. Please, there's some noise at the background, so those at the back there, if you can settle so that we can have, because this beaming live on Asempa and other platforms, so please, those who are busily working out in and out, please, if you can settle down so that we can go straight to the program, we'll be very grateful. So we have the Director of Communication, who doubles as the MP of Adenta, and an individual that the group people of Adenta equally decided on to honor him with additional 4 years to sustain the developmental project and the good work that he's doing for the group people of Adenta. Honorable Yabwabia Samoa to deliver this evening or this afternoon press conference. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media and, of course, the listening and viewing Ghanaian and diasporan public. This is a continuation of our leadership series, and we're looking especially today at the cocoa sector. And that's an anchor industry that has impacted our national economic security than any other industry for well over 120 years, and therefore demands quality leadership to sustain. It is also one area that John Dramani Mahama showed clearly that his goal was not to build on what he inherited, but to plunder. It is one area that the incompetence, corruption, carelessness, and recklessness of John Mahama as president was obvious to all, especially the ordinary cocoa farmer. It is one area which the president has treated with care, competence, and vision, in line with his overarching manifesto promise to transform Ghana by adding value to what we produce. A clear example of this, ladies and gentlemen, is cocoa processing. In 2016, the year that John Mahama and the NDC lost power, 27% of cocoa produced in Ghana was processed in Ghana. That is 27% of the raw material was processed in Ghana. Today, as we speak, that figure has shot up to 40%, with plans to set up more indigenous processing facilities. Cocoa is grown in commercial quantities in 10 of Ghana's 16 regions. So the new patriotic party, which since the days of J.B. Dankwa, Bafua Kutu, and Akwesi Abrefa Busia, has always been on the side of the Ghanaian cocoa farmer, is fully aware of what the industry means to creating jobs and providing incomes to families and communities. And that is why we continue to invest in the industry more than the NDC. Again and again, compared to the Mahama-led NDC, both in government and now in opposition, President Akufo-Addo has demonstrated better understanding of the needs of the country and the direction in which he needs to take us to meet those needs. The cocoa sector is another area where the president has demonstrated strong leadership and initiative, leading to the creation and sustenance of the first ever, and I repeat, the first ever African inspired international community price support system, the living income differential. This means that through the sustained and uncompromising joint efforts of President Akufo-Addo and the Ivorian leader, our farmers are now to earn an additional income through a US $400 per ton premium on the world price for cocoa. It takes strong and decisive leadership to win $400 more for our farmers. And that is why we are saying for more to do more for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Tete Kwashi introduced cocoa into Ghana from Equatorial Guinea in the 19th century. Since then, a huge industry with multiple tentacles has spread throughout our economy. Indeed, between 1911 and 1976, Ghana was the world's leading producer of cocoa, contributing between 30 to 40% of global output. It is this feat of old that the MPP is determined to reclaim, and the programs that we are rolling out in the sector will deliberately and certainly see to that if we protect the way the MPP is managing the affairs of this country. Significant as cocoa is to the Ghanaian economy and national security, key challenges include lack of control over international shocks and local efficiencies. Ladies and gentlemen, this media interaction today seeks to bring to the fore what the President has done, leading the MPP government in the cocoa sector to restore and enhance progress. Naturally, in doing so, we must assess what we inherited. A credible Ghanaian government must have a credible vision for cocoa, not the underhand press conferences that are taken from rural areas once in a while on selective portions. Today is going to be a comprehensive look at what exactly Nanado is doing in the sector. The cocoa industry continues to provide foreign exchange, jobs, incomes, and a decent standard of living to thousands directly and indirectly. The current and biggest challenge is to localize value addition in order to deepen its contribution to skills, jobs, and incomes, as well as international value and brand. As the President says, it is manifestly unfair that we earn barely 6% of the value of an industry that between two countries we provide nearly 60% of the raw material. Between the Ivory Coast and Ghana, we are providing nearly 60% of the world's output of raw cocoa, and yet we earn barely 6% of that 100 billion a year industry. Prior to assumption of office by the MPP government, the cocoa industry was plummeting and in dire need of retooling, restructuring, and repositioning due to the high level of mismanagement, corruption, and incompetence that characterized the Mahama-led administration. In fact, even the chemicals that were needed to help the trees grow and bear fruit were badly compromised by the NDC policy of unbridled corruption. The evidence is there for all to see, including records with state institutions. Production of cocoa, having risen to a high of 1 million metric tons per annum as a throughput from the progressive policies of the Kufuor administration, declined drastically year on year under candidate Mahama as president. He could not even sustain the gains protected by his predecessor president, the late John Atta Mills. The NDC government under John Mahama chose to distribute what was meant to be free fertilizers, indeed, in a way that became just another incentive for corruption. Rather than rehabilitation of the industry, a thriving fertilizer smuggling enterprise was created, some perpetrators being friends, family, and cronies of the then Mahama government. The country suffered colossal losses due to the hundreds of thousands of bags of fertilizers which found their way onto the markets of neighboring countries. These smuggling incidents, again, are very well documented within the relevant state agencies. Upon assumption of office, the MPP government decided to subsidize fertilizers by absorbing a large share of the cost and then retooled the fertilizer distribution process to improve equity and availability to farmers in all cocoa growing areas. Farmers do not have to pay upfront to get fertilizers. Farmers do not have to pay upfront to get fertilizers. The retooling has also eliminated opportunities for smuggling by middlemen. Moreover, very significantly, cocoa farmer cooperatives were reintroduced. The effect is that the farmers gained ownership of the processes so that the farmers by themselves ensured effective, efficient, and timely supply of adequate amounts of fertilizers, agrochemicals, and implements within and amongst themselves through the regenerated cooperatives. The recklessness in the handling of the cocoa industry further caused a downturn in the financial position of Cocoa Board. The Mahama-led administration borrowed $1.8 billion through a syndicated loan during the 2016-17 crop season, despite the fact that the crop production for that particular season was far less than what was borrowed. Like other interventions within the cocoa industry, cocoa road projects began under an MPP administration, specifically the Kufuor-led administration. The original core purpose was to evacuate the cocoa beans from growing communities to what was called takeover centers. But what did we see under John Mahama? Far from what the NDC will want Ghanaians to believe, at no point within the current government was it ever discussed or a decision taken to neglect cocoa roads projects begun under the previous administration. However, in order to deepen accountability and protect the public purse, as well as ensure value for money, due diligence had to be exercised. Cocoa roads projects were suspended for an audit to be conducted, especially after some anomalies which resulted in inflated costs of some of the contracts awarded by the previous government. The suspension of the projects allowed for a rescoping and proper alignment of funds, as well as open competitive bidding processes towards the award of new cocoa roads contracts. It is important, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage to state that the contractors who were awarded contracts by the previous administration and had genuine claims were promptly paid. During the 2017-2018 cocoa season, an amount of GAC 497 million was paid to some of these cocoa roads contractors. 497 million was paid to cocoa roads contractors whose contracts were awarded by the John Mahama administration. And another GAC 414 million was subsequently paid in 2018-2019 cocoa season, making a total of nearly $1 billion Ghana cedis paid in cocoa roads for awards made during candidate Mahama's era. Also, road projects awarded by the previous government that were near completion in 2017 were allowed to be completed by the contractors. The records show that the Mahama-led government deviated from the original purpose and intent for the construction of cocoa roads. There was a heavy concentration on the construction of highways and in some cases roads in non-cocoa growing areas. A whopping 63% of the funds for cocoa roads was diverted to highways. 5% went to urban roads and the rest went to feeder roads. This situation has changed significantly in the current dispensation. That is why today, the increase in tarred feeder roads across the cocoa growing regions in Ghana can be as high as nearly 40% in just under 4 years. 37% specifically in the eastern region, for example, from 34 kilometers in 2016 to 466 kilometers today, serving the genuine purpose of evacuating cocoa from the growing areas to the takeover centers. Candidate Mahama is indeed a curious man. He has shown some remarkable bravery in daring to speak on the contracts he and his spouse awarded for cocoa roads. He is asking for the government to publish what is already public, the audit report of the said cocoa roads contracts. First of all, for John Mahama, his habit was to award contracts even when he had no clue how to pay for them. Cocoa roads contracts awarded by the previous government, constituting 229 projects, amounted to some 5.1 billion Ghana cedis. This was at a time when funds available to pay for road construction in total was only 1.7 billion Ghana cedis. Specifically for cocoa roads, the approved annual amounts averaged 500 million for the Cocoa Board Infrastructural Development Trust Fund for the entire 5-year period of the program. Indeed, John Mahama committed 3.2 billion, 64% of that he did not have to just 74 projects. He committed 3.2 billion, 64% of a total fund that he did not have, to just 74 projects awarded by the Ghana Highways Authority, not the Department of Feeder Roads. The 131 projects under feeder roads was valued at just 1.5 billion cedis. Again, the average cost per kilometer of trunk roads in the contract awarded was 2.5 million cedis, more than double the kilometer cost of the feeder roads at 1.16 million Ghana cedis. The 140 contractors who awarded the 229 contracts, none of the contracts went through a competitive tendering process. Not a single one went through a competitive tendering process. The cost per kilometer was much higher than the average cost of other government-sponsored road projects. For example, for the Pristia Samre Boy Road, awarded to Asabia Engineering Limited, the audit report found that it was inflated by 121.85%. This is a classic case of incompetent economic management worsened by corruption. Also, several contractors were requesting payment for variation on contract amounts which were multiple times in excess of the initial contingency or variation amounts allocated. Whilst the Bahama-led government could not honor the payment of contracts they signed right from 2014-2015 cocoa season, they continued to sign additional contracts till 2017 when they left office, piling up dubious debts. Now let's look at how candidate Mahama's regime dealt with swollen shoot disease. Swollen shoot became widespread, threatening to bring our heritage cocoa industry to its knees. John Mahama's response was to ignore cocoa farmers, which led to collapsing the economy in vital areas such as the Western North region. It took Akufo-Addo and the MPP to bring life back to the economy there in that region. Prior to 2014, Cocoa Board was actively involved in the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease control program, and that program is usually referred to as CSSVD, as cocoa swollen shoot virus disease. That program had the following responsibilities before 2014. A, removal of diseased and contracted trees. B, compensation to farmers for trees removed, both initial treatment and replanting grants, and then the supply of free hybrid cocoa and economic tree seedlings for replanting, and of course finally treating farms and technical backup through extension education. This laudable social intervention policy on the CSSVD control and containment was changed by John Mahama in 2014. Farmers were asked to cut the diseased trees and replant themselves, without any compensation whatsoever. Farmers were only given free seedlings. Moreover, once the cocoa trees were removed, the landowners took back their farms. Accordingly, most of the cocoa seedlings given to farmers between 2014 and 2016 were planted under asymptomatic and dying diseased trees, poorly treated farms, and in some cases abandoned. The seedlings were abandoned under the cocoa trees without planting because the farmers simply didn't have the wherewithal, the strength, the energy, the financial clout to replant the farms. Consequently, seedlings, even before planting, were infected by CSSVD and had to be removed, of course, at a cost to the state. The change in policy also led to the rapid spread of the disease, especially in the western north and eastern regions. The infection in the western north region was so severe that over 40%, 214,508 hectares, of its total production area of 509,295 hectares had been devastated, according to a 2017 survey. At the national level, a whopping 315,886 hectares out of a total of 1.9 million hectares of cocoa farm had been lost to the CSSVD, thus seriously affecting production. Western North, which used to produce over 330,000 metric tons in 2010-2011, was now accounting for a mere 154,000 metric tons. The NDC government was characterized by poor cocoa bonus management and a short-changing of farmers with respect to cocoa prices. Though the long-held principle is to pay at least 70% of the FOB price to cocoa farmers, at the time the NDC left office, farmers were receiving only 65.2% of the FOB price. In the area of value addition to our cocoa beans, not a single processing plant was either conceived or built to boost our country's long-held value addition agenda and to create jobs and opportunities for Ghanaians with the appropriate skills. Rather, the West African Mills Company, WAMCO, an existing cocoa processing factory, was neglected and shut down in 2013 with a little over 254 workers laid off. Since 2017, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has led the MPP government to demonstrate its resolve to fix the mess left behind by the NDC government by retooling, restructuring, and repositioning of Cocoa Board into a robust entity in order to increase our cocoa production while making the life of the cocoa farmer much better than before. So we've launched into an entirely new series of cocoa interventions to bring the industry around. One of the major areas we are doing is the cocoa rehabilitation program. Under that program, the MPP government through Cocoa Board is bearing the cost of removing all diseased trees from farms. Cocoa Board has been tasked with directly overseeing the entire process from cutting to the replanting of the farms. Cocoa Board also provides compensation of GAC 1,000 cedis each to affected farmers and their land owners. The farms are replanted with disease-tolerant, early-bearing, high-yielding cocoa varieties at no cost absolutely to the farmers. During the 2-year-long rehabilitation period, Cocoa Board provides labor to work on the farms at no cost to the farmer. This has proven to be a far superior approach to rehabilitating affected farms and stopping further spread of CSSVD. This is the government that is working for the cocoa farmer and indirectly and directly for the Ghanaian people through the sustenance of the cocoa industry, our backbone. Absolutely no cost to the farmer for cleaning up the farm, replanting, and making sure that the replanted seedlings mature. Between 2017 and 2019, a total of 144,421,477 seedlings were produced and distributed to farmers over 2017, 2018, 2019. 144,000 seedlings free to farmers. Most of these seedlings were utilized in the Western, North, and Eastern regions for the pilot rehabilitation program. That is the replanting of the CSVD affected cocoa farms, financed by Cocoa Board, as alluded to already. The government is scaling up that program and therefore encouraged Cocoa Board to borrow from the African Development Bank USD 600 million. Out of that money, USD 140 million, that's 23.3%, will be devoted to the treatment of CSSVD. Another innovation that has been introduced by the government is mechanization of farm maintenance through the dual-purpose pruner slasher. The pruner slasher introduction and other programs have been labeled the Productivity Enhancement Program by Cocoa Board. Productivity Enhancement Program. Now, the idea is to increase by significant proportions the production capacity of existing cocoa trees and ultimately enable farmers earn more from their labor without having to increase their farm sizes. So you come to one of those productivity enhancement programs, which is mass pruning with the dual purpose pruner slasher. You mass prune cocoa farms when you do a careful cutting of dead, deceased, and excess branches of cocoa trees ahead of a flowering season. Now, the impacts are tremendous. Parasitic plants, especially mistletoe, are removed. Pruned plants develop more flowers as the plants devote a lot more of their nutrients to the flowering process and then to fruit growth after pollination. These, in turn, result in significant increases in yield volumes from the same trees. So you are applying technologies to the same numbers of farms, the same acreage, and increasing output from that acreage. Now, Cocoa Board is conducting mass pruning of cocoa trees across the country. This is the first time such an exercise is happening in Ghana under Cocoa Board, directly related to the distribution of 100,000 pieces of dual-purpose motorized slashers and pruners to cocoa farms across the 10 growing regions. So you have the modern technology of the hand pruner slasher being given out, 100,000 pieces to farmers. The slasher is far more efficient than the traditional methods of weeding and pruning. Their use reduces the chance of injury to the cocoa tree, such as branch tear, damage to the buds on the trees, and they also considerably reduce the fatigue associated with farming, as one needs not exert much energy when using the dual-purpose motorized pruner slasher. The introduction of this equipment is not only in recognition of introducing innovative ways of farming, but also the urgent need to phase out labor-intensive ways of farming. The drudgery of the use of machetes and hoes for weeding often drives farmers to apply weedicides on their farms, despite its major adverse impact on the trees and the flavor of the cocoa. So, Cocoa Board has made sure that having banned weedicides, the pruners and slashers are available. The dual purpose, they are named Sharp Power 40 motorized pruners, are distributed through the recognized cocoa farmer cooperatives, which we alluded to earlier, who are now handling the fertilizer. They are now handling the slasher pruners as well. So they own the processes and they equitably spread the use of the equipment, reducing cost per farmer. The other one, which is a major innovation, is hand pollination, going hand in hand with pruner slashing. Hand pollination, arguably, is the most important thing that has happened to the cocoa industry in Ghana since it was introduced. Now, what does it do? It is fertilization of flowers by hand. The male and female flowers are fertilized by hand rather than waiting for the bees to do that job. It is done by hand. And that means that a greater percentage of the flowers on the cocoa trees get fertilized, leading to massive increases in production. Averagely, a cocoa tree produces 1,000 flowers every season, yet only 5% of the flowers grow into pods. Compared to other countries such as Malaysia and Indonesia, which produce 2 tons of cocoa per hectare, Ghana only produces 0.45 tons of cocoa per hectare. To address this, Cocoa Board in 2017 launched the artificial hand pollination project in all the cocoa growing regions. Cocoa trees which naturally produce 20 pods, as we know it in Ghana, through hand pollination are now producing between 100 to 300 pods, and even beyond. Consequently, many farmers are now developing and producing cocoa at record levels. Same farm, same number of trees, and you are getting hundreds of percentage increases in output from 20 pods to over 300 pods. The beauty about hand pollination is that it's also creating jobs, especially for young women. Cocoa Board initially engaged 10,000 youth as pollinators. That number has increased to over 30,000 at present. The skillful young pollinators are also being trained and assisted in establishing community-based service companies to offer pollination services to farmers. It is these young, trained people who are managing the farmer cooperatives and managing the distribution of fertilizers, chemicals, as well as managing the use of equipment that is modern, including the hand pruners and slashers. Science is also involved, and to that extent, Cocoa Board has introduced early mass spraying based on scientific evidence from CRIG. That's the Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana. We call it CRIG, but CRIG. And CRIG has demonstrated that if mass spraying is done at a particular time, then you are able to break the cycle of breeding and reproduction of pests and diseases. And therefore, cocoa farmers have hailed the introduction of the early spraying schedule, the first part of which is carried out between April and May. It has ensured the annihilation of pests which hitherto could not be targeted due to lapses in the previous spraying schedule. What happened was that some farms were sprayed and some farms were left unsprayed. And then there were pretensions about which farms belonged to which political party card-bearing members, when in actual fact it was just being inefficiently and ineptly done. So it's the same farmer cooperatives who are helping to resolve this. As we've already said, we're also doing free seedling distribution. I've already told you about 144 million seeds that have been distributed for replanting to avert CSS, VD, and help establish new farms. Indeed, Cocoa Board has increased the number of nursery sites and staff of its seed production division, and consequently, the number of seedlings raised each year and distributed to cocoa farms have increased drastically and dramatically at no cost to the farmer. Steps have also been taken to modernize the production of healthy cocoa seedlings for the field with the adoption of the use of galvanized poles and treated lumber for the nursery structures instead of bamboo, the use of lasting UV-protected receptacles instead of disposable poly bags. The new receptacles are environmentally friendly and are reusable, like I've said. The use of soilless media called cocoa peat instead of topsoil, which has become increasingly difficult to access. What we call black soil is now very difficult to find. So they are using a formulation called cocoa peat. And then the sinking of boreholes and use of irrigation facilities in places where access to a perennial water source is a challenge, which previously was not the case. I have just alluded to boreholes. It is important in assessing the cocoa industry that you look at the vision, the strategic vision of the government aimed at sustaining that core industry. Irrigation in cocoa, only the MPP led by Nana Akufo-Addo could have thought that far. Cocoa Board has begun piloting of irrigation systems, and they are supposed to provide alternative and supplementary with water for cocoa farms to lessen the effects of climate change and harsh weather conditions on cocoa production. These irrigation systems are ultramodern, solar-powered, and were first tested by Cocoa Board in its seed gardens and selected farms across the country. As we speak, the irrigation systems have improved moisture content of soils, enhanced the retention of flowers of cocoa trees, helped to increase the size of cocoa beans, and increase productivity per hectare. Farmers with irrigation systems are able to produce cocoa all year round because the cocoa trees do not suffer from the extremely dry weather of the Harmattan season. This project is entering the next phase where many more farms will be served by that process. Increases in yield volumes following the installation of the systems are immediate. So at present, the installation is up to 30% of all cocoa farms in the country. And this is all done at no cost to the farmer. The innovative modern concept of applying solar-powered irrigation borehole systems to doing cocoa all year round is at no cost to the cocoa farmer. Over the past 3 years, Cocoa Board has consistently increased the number of frontline extension staff on the ground by recruiting and training over 1,300 youth within cocoa growing communities in order to provide extension services to cocoa farmers. These youth have markedly improved the frequency and delivery of quality extension services to cocoa farmers. It has reduced the previous extension agent to farmer ratio, which was 1 extension officer to 3,000 farmers, to the present ratio of 1 extension officer to 600 farmers, from 3,000 to 600. These are genuine, real investments in improving the cocoa sector for sustainability. Farmers are educated on good agronomic practices through rallies, group meetings, farm visits, home visits, and radio programs. They are also educated to appreciate that cocoa is a business. Farmers are also taking through additional livelihood skills training for livelihood diversification. These programs include training in grass cutter and other livestock rearing, snail farming, poultry farming, soap making, detergents and powder making, food and other cash crop farming, and mushroom production, amongst others. These programs are carried out through collaboration between Cocoa Board and private stakeholders within the cocoa sector. Cocoa Board, beyond all this, has been working with women and youth in the sector. Since 2019, Cocoa Board has implemented the Environmental and Social Sustainability Project, ESSP. The project aims to improve environmental sustainability, eliminate child labor, empower women in cocoa production, and enhance their roles in their communities. Already, this project has trained and empowered over 6,000 women in cocoa farming. The current management of Cocoa Board has made it a deliberate policy in all of its activities to encourage women who are into cocoa farming to fully participate and take advantage of its many cocoa-related programs. Under the new policy to bring fertilizers, inputs, and other agrochemicals directly to farmers, women farmer groups and cooperatives have testified to the timely delivery of the agrochemicals from Cocoa Board. Many female cocoa farmers have been awarded and will continue to be awarded from the local to the national level for their invaluable contribution to the cocoa sector. As I said, the youth have not been ignored, and the Youth in Cocoa Farming Program is a module that's currently being run by Cocoa Board, who encourage the youth to engage in cocoa farming and encourage others to get involved in cocoa farming as well. Under this program, Cocoa Board liaises with traditional authorities and landowners to release lands to young men and women who are interested in cocoa cultivation on flexible terms. Furthermore, young cocoa farmers are encouraged to form youth groups. This allows easy access to extension education, cocoa input supply, and credit facilities. Dozens of youth groups, cooperatives with membership in the tens of thousands have been inaugurated, and for the first time are receiving direct support from Cocoa Board. Such youth groups are also engaged as service providers by Cocoa Board for mass spraying, hand pollination, and for farm rehabilitation. The National Award of Most Promising Young Cocoa Farmer is also to encourage more of the youth to go into cocoa farming. Youth groups are then again linked by Cocoa Board to access credits from reputable financial institutions. So it's a self-sustaining cycle. Once you get in there, you are properly educated, you are hooked up to extension services, and then you become a service provider yourself, accessing the services for your own use and extending it to other farmers. As part of welfare and corporate social responsibility, Cocoa Board has long supported education in second cycle institutions by providing scholarships. Scholarship provision is the oldest of all the support services Cocoa Board has provided to farmers since ever. However, thanks to President Akufo-Addo, secondary school education in Ghana is now free for all. This has eliminated the need for Cocoa Board to provide scholarships to wards of farmers at that level, that's the free SHS level. Therefore, Cocoa Board is developing a new policy, and that is to channel former scholarship funds into the construction of basic schools in cocoa farming communities. Cocoa Board is identifying gaps where there are no school structures readily available and partnering with the Ghana Education Service to build new schools to fill those gaps. We're also partnering with the University of Ghana and other partners to provide programs of social inclusion and eliminate child labor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the cocoa price, a very, very important area where our mischievous NDC friends try to score sneak points which are not theirs to appropriate. Only a few days ago, the government announced a new producer price of cocoa at 660 cedis per bag. It is by far the highest amount ever paid to Ghana's cocoa farmers and a demonstration of the government's commitment towards the welfare of cocoa farmers. It's a substantial increase from the previous cocoa season when the same government was in charge. It is important to consider the fact that the government maintained producer prices in the preceding years despite a 40% decline in the international prices of cocoa. In adherence to the long-held principle that at least 70% of the FOB price of cocoa must be paid to cocoa farmers, the MPP has constantly exceeded 70% by paying 83%, 76%, and 76.6% over the past 3 cocoa seasons, compared to the ND's 65% before. In the face of the decline of producer price of cocoa within the global market and the mounting pressure by international bodies to reduce the producer price of cocoa, the government instead took a decision to safeguard the welfare of cocoa farmers in Ghana by maintaining the highest sub-regional producer price in the midst of a 2-year-long fall in the price of cocoa on the international market. This was at a time when Côte d'Ivoire had dropped its producer prices by 30%. The world market price of cocoa is the single biggest determinant of the producer price of cocoa. The reality is that no Ghana government can claim to have control over the world market price of cocoa at any moment in time. Therefore, to increase the revenue that the country earns from the sale of its cocoa, an ingenious new stream of income must be created. That is why the living income differential was introduced. Now, the living income differential is a component of the new cocoa trading mechanism championed by the Ghanaian government in partnership with the Ivorian government. It ensures that every ton of cocoa being sold from Ghana will attract an extra $400 in addition to the existing premium. This historic achievement reforms the way global cocoa is priced. The objective is to reduce the high levels of poverty among farmers in Ghana and Ivory Coast, who together produce more than 60% of the world's cocoa. The main aim of the living income differential is to safeguard cocoa farmers against price shocks. This is historic. It is the very first time African countries have managed to enable international acceptance of a premium beyond agreed prices of an internationally traded commodity. The oil sector have it in OPEC, but cocoa has never had it. Today, between Ghana and Ivory Coast, the world has accepted that a premium must be paid. It's a beginning. It is our belief that it will come even higher as we improve the agronomic practices that we have detailed here. As output increases and quality increases, you can still ask for more. The present government, through Cocoa Board, has also led the effort to retool and expand the total cocoa processing capacities of the entire Ghanaian-owned cocoa processing sector, while embarking on a massive campaign to boost both local consumption and international sale. If you want more than 6%, you have to process, and that is the aim of this government. Under the MPP government, WAMCO, which was shut down by the NDC in 2013, is now fit for purpose. It remains operational and is profit-making and employing hundreds of Ghanaians. The reopening of WAMCO is not an outlier. It emphasized the various interventions carried out by the Nanado-led MPP government to increase local cocoa processing and value addition. Similar support has been extended to other local cocoa processing factories, such as the Cocoa Processing Company, that's CPC, the Niche Cocoa Industry Limited. You've been eating their cocoa, it's brilliant. Plot, that is PLOT Enterprises Ghana Limited, which also is producing local artisanal cocoa. Now, the total volume of locally processed cocoa has moved from 27%, that I began by saying, to a record high of 40%. This brings Ghana closer to achieving the 50% processing target that was earmarked by this government to be attained in the next couple of years. Now, regarding small-scale cocoa processing and artisanal cocoa products manufacturing, the current rules for the supply of cocoa requires companies to purchase not less than 50 tons of cocoa. In view of the fact that most SMEs in cocoa processing need smaller quantities of cocoa beans for their operations, a committee made up of representatives from Cocoa Board, the FDA, and Cocoa Value Addition Artisans Association of Ghana, that is Cocoa Value Addition Artisans Association of Ghana, COVAG, have been constituted to develop strategies for value addition and local market access for artisanal chocolate and small-scale cocoa processing. So we are getting to that point where we are producing quality cocoa in Ghana, consuming it on the domestic market, and seeking to export and dominate the international market with our peculiar flavor. Moreover, government has already announced plans to further expand local cocoa processing by allocating a significant proportion of the US $600 million loan facility from the African Development Bank to fund the scaling up and processing of cocoa beans. In addition, it has signed an agreement for the establishment of a new cocoa processing factory at Sekwiwioso in the Western North region to further increase local processing value addition and to create jobs. This is apart from the other international entities, Cadbury and Fry and others who are within the Tema industrial enclave. The government is already embarking on a major campaign to boost both local consumption and international sale of processed cocoa. It's also exploring new market avenues in Asia, particularly in China and India, where there are ready markets for the sale of Ghana's processed cocoa, which is arguably amongst the best in the world. In doing all this, the thorny question of what happens to the aged cocoa farmer comes into play. And as we are speaking, and indeed, this morning and yesterday, the Chief Executive of Cocoa Board has had occasion to speak to it. The cocoa pension scheme for farmers is on. All the processes, stakeholder consultations, the trustees, everything, and the regulatory requirements with National Pensions Regulatory Authority are on track. And I believe that I'll leave that to them since he's had the privilege of speaking to it himself yesterday and this morning. But it is a fact. It is happening. Our cocoa farmers are going to get pensions. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the MPP government has performed far better than the Mahama-led administration when it comes to the cocoa sector. Leadership, decisive leadership to sustain an anchor industry, a backbone of Ghana's economy. The MPP, led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has performed far better than candidate Mahama's NDC when it comes to managing that sector. Indeed, the NDC, over the 8 years of John Mahama and partly the late President Mills, cannot point to one innovation that they dreamt of and created in order to help farmers. Rather, all they tried to do was maintain what Kufuor did, and even that they bastardized the free fertilizer distribution and the mismanagement of the bonus systems. Today, cocoa farmers are far better off than yesterday, and tomorrow looks even more promising. We are, however, as a nation, constantly reminded of the immeasurable sacrifices and roles that our cocoa farmers play in the development of this country. We're therefore asking that we be allowed to continue, empower, for more, to do more for the cocoa farmer, to introduce and implement policies that will inure to the collective benefit of our farmers and strengthen Cocoa Board to do even more for our farmers. Our humble warning to cocoa farmers, their dependents, and all well-meaning Ghanaians is this: keep candidates Mahama's hands away from your cocoa. He is the alternative, and when it comes to the welfare and well-being of the Ghanaian farmer, candidate Mahama is dangerous. He does not know how to manage the economy. He does not know how to help the cocoa industry. He has no clue what the needs of the farmers are. To him, cocoa is just an avenue for corruption, leaving the industry and the farmer to suffer. Stay with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the MPP to protect the progress made so far and transform the industry for the welfare and well-being of all Ghanaians. Thank you very much.
Director, I think we will need you to retrieve for us.
Just a summary. I know. So the director will give a brief summary for us, whilst he lay a lot of emphasis on John Akate or solutions. Over to you.
Medasi. Ne me pamucho mo monsa ka brofo no mo kasa wa chire ho a yen be si etie twi ne yente. Eda mo asese wie ye frɛ mo a mo bae ye dwada nhyehyɛ no a ye hwɛ de kandini a obetimi de Ghana akɔ nanim de n'ani so ade hunu ɛso de wakyerɛ sɛ owa kokuduro ɛne abadaye a obetimi de man akɔ nanim na ene ye de kanea no to koko yakuafo ɛne de ye no koko mu ɛne ye de ato nsene so ahwɛ de NDC John Mahama NDC etimi ye ɛne de Nanado MPP abaye na de yesisi a yehu an se John Mahama NDC no omo antwataw omo baaye no koko a de be hye omo nsa kofo nhyehyɛ panti enyini ko opepe baako afi bia no omo mbrace no ete ba fom se wi na de enti na ete ba fom nhyehyɛ bia ni ho omo hyehyɛ ya na aye papa ba fertilizer omo ka se omo de nche ekuafo a omo anwene hu yi ensi ne pi nti fertilizer na omo de che nyina no omo anuanom ne omo afefo ne omo namfofo a omo ben aban no esan sesa fertilizer no ekoton di ba sikasem a omo ma ne to apekura chese koko sikasem fa bonus a ne yede dum omo entoso sika yede dum omo ni nyina no nwonwonai de ne di twam kura ne akate yade ya ne tisi koko so a omo ye hwe ha ma ade a na wo se nka aban boa na yakuafo no ahoɔden wɔ fam a nkomo som na egina yie no omo gya akatesɛm no ɛhyɛ koko kuafo no nsa omo ba ya no omo bedane seedlings na go so sɛ wa ko sisi ama akuafo no bebree nya ho ahoɔden nti akate emmene yɛn ma western north ni eastern region baabi ananka yinu wɔsoro ba production no ɛte ba fam sɛ wi ɛno akyi no omo kon be do cocoa roots no a amampanyi kufo ye de bae na nadwen ni se obeyi akwan na tototo nkurase na yeyi cocoa no a ye de aba baabi a ebetimi aboa no na ye de aba tema no omo de omo hu ni se akwaye ade bi a abeka dodode no ho enti omo dwabo mu a na omo ni nyina so bia baabi omo pesika na omo de atua enti omo bobo ka kese bum bum ewo cocoa rose no mu enso ye beto ye ne ampaba ye be so mu no ye siesia ma wo mo na wo sie tu ka cocoa rose ye tua ekeka ko 1 billion cedis de ne wo sie twa sonso ne ye siesie ne yie no ye siesie ne yie akate ne nso ye ne natentam ama ne aban eba wafuo mu a oyi nnuadada no ono ana ho odin wonje kuani ne sika wasan dua ono ana ho odin eno nso saa onyi kuani ne sika na wasan hwen ahwe so ama omo ye ho adwuma no omo atimi ahwe so mfie mienu a no nyinaa no aban ene tua ho ka ama bibia ekototi nti ene wo ye kuani a ugina ona so se aban eboawo ama akatititiru a ha adwen pa no wabrase aban san de afidie bia ba ye friend hampruna slasher ene wayi adɔ a yɛde sisie ɛna ɛyɛ no afiri hɔ adɔ a yɛde sisie ɛyɛ no afiri hɔ enti ɛnɛ no wonya pruna slasher ne bia ɛdom wɔ paa ɛma ɔyɛ adwumaden aban asan de hand pollination aba hand pollination no ɔmotimi wode wo nsa ɛtoatoa egu nhyirani a eduane gu nhyirani a wode wo nsa toatoa ɛno ne timi ma opagya koko dododo a ekodua baako so ekɔ kyirikyiri ebi firi aduonu pɛ anka wamfa wo nsa anya a obenya no wode wo nsa ya etimi pagya kɔ ahasa ɛyɛ aduaba a ɛbɛba koko dua baako so we nyinaa no aban de mebunu ena eye a wo kyerɛw akwan kyerɛ soronko a wahyehyɛ bibi e friend farmer cooperatives nti niema na aban ye ni nyinaa no eye enuru eye fertilizer eye hand pruner slasher no eye hand pollination no de fa cooperatives yi mu a mebunu ena da no a boa na entity soronko nso a ban de aka ho no wafa nipa 1300 ewa adwuma mu a mom titiye no ebi ka saa mebunu yi sie kasai aban hya ase no ye 11000 ne aduru 30000 saa mebunu no nso akoye adwuma soronko kura amakoku eho adwuma ayefe na adekasie baako nanado danko akufuado ene Ivory Coast aban aye ene se omotimi aka omadwene abom ama omani kwasi broni atentam atene kwakwa se afedie oton koku a obetua $400 aka ton bia ebi nsi da se bibifo etimi yire so omni broni atwe ewa ade a ye ton na bibrim ha ma broni agye atom se obetua sika ni bi aka ho nti ne no $400 bibia obeton koko ton ba ko bia a friend living income differential ebedi onsem e ma otimi di siesie bo no se be ya bo no eti kofom a sei won hihye nyina ye hwe mebunu ye hwe ma e koko mu enti ye ye nhihye a ye de be hye ma na mebunu ni monyam afi bia no ye be ye koko nhihye bia ye be hye ma ene mebunu om ye koko mu adwuma mu ani monyam ni nyina ne se ye be se ye ma edom digitum se koko adɔ no enye ekuayo bia ehye nipa so se kuayo kwa na emom eye adwuma soronko a broni be ka se eye business kese a oye ni ya obenya mfaso ene nti aban da akye nhihye pa ne se opesenki ebenya na nka koko no ye dɔ ne ha ka tete na ye de ye soa ni nyina kono opesenki ye sachira no ne ye fiti ne kese pa wa ha yetimi fiti emu beye oha chichi mu aduonum wa ha nti sie kasai ye ba tumi mu no na yetimi eye nhihye no aduonum enson pe oha chichi mu no aduonum nson ena ya pegem ekọ aduanan efiri de di free aduoson ekọ aduanan nti ya ye bi pa ye ni da so ne se ebekọ ye nim eba saa nsakire ebeba ne se ebenya sika botene abrochire sika ewo ha ebesa ma emebunu pii enya adwuma enso aye enti osisi koko de yaye ne koko mu a eno no akoye adwuma bi a eno na etai ye mai economy echi aban bi obeba bia wantimi anye koko hu nhihye pa no na kyesa aban no ne ni so ade hunu bia ma mpuntuo ewo ye mai mu ha na saa ne ne yasese akire mu amama hu se de MPP abanya na nado danko akufuado edani mu no wache adwuma sono pegya koko no esi baabi a NDC fo ntimi nyenda omotena ho no omo antimi anye omotena ho de digya omo no dwiri gui nti yesira mo ya maame no ya papa no ya nuanom a mo yokua mu a mo ye koko munhwe ni yie na mo amajo Mahama amem koko fuo biem wo hwe okokromotie yi a onbɛyɛfuo no ne ɛnbɛyɛfuo no kyina enti okokromotie no fama de obetimi aboawo na okoko afuo no anyini fɛfɛɛfɛ de obɛba besiesie akate na mawo a ɛmmɔ oka de obɛba bɛdɔ amawo a ɛmmɔ oka de obɛba ɔde aduro begusu a ɛmmɔ oka de obɛba a obɛma nhyerɛne na gu fɛfɛɛfɛ ama aduaba na ba bibiri a ɛmmɔ oka obɛfa ne nyinaa ho ka na wasan atɔ koko na mawo na ho atɔ ɛnenso ɔse saa nipa no anso se obesisi school dan nketenkete ɛwɔ mbiambia bia ntemu bia ɔdɔ koko bia sɛ bɛyɛ a ɔba nso ebenya ɛho mfaso ɔno ne yɛde yɛ kokromotie ma no ɛnyɛ John Mahama onim deɛ ɔyɛ nti awie yi madawroma yɛda mo ase ɛne mo so pa mo de atie yɛ Mumbo Devruno, a Baku dia Untimi in anado ni MPP abain, Enfrim, yen ye toaswa, ye best sachra, Kuku, ama sika, abem, ama asafa, nentumapa, efra. Ye maimuha, Kuku ntine krubinum agidi. Kuku nti, ena krubinum agidi. Yen ye do Kuku free 1911, EBC 1970, na ye dikai, wiasi afana nyina. Ni eto Kuku, etoton, ewa manone, ene, eno ahwere enso, enseye. Nanado wo hoye die, se ye boban ni amadwo mama amfa ne benkum mechia ne dia, yenim se ye bekɔ yenim. Ede mo asipi, se motie.
Any questions for the director? Just about 2 or 3.
The audit report on cocoa roads. We are aware that when this government assumed office, the projects on the cocoa road were put on hold because of some investigation. Since then, we haven't heard anything, so there's a demand for this audit report to be made public. Are you going to see to this demand, and when do you wish to make this public? Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll take a series of questions and then we'll respond to all the questions. So the first question has come.
Okay. For the sake of my father's is who are listening to us, I'll go down to my local dialect. Actually, friendly Daniel Lenny, Dr. Lenny, Ohim. Request me a comment. I think NDP, when you receive a year, cocoa bag, equal 660. But the question is, one more year Juma, I will cocoa board as a staff of the cocoa board. Trojana, I find the few local, I will call. One catch you what they compare to a farmer, or struggle, or sweaty, every and I think the room is sorry, a poor. Now, what is 660 compare more you should look at? You don't even have any idea about the farming council. Do you think it's good? I think the second question, cocoa board. I think in the CNF you are the current president or government investigation. How much do they earn up every annual? How much do they earn for Ghana? The same goes to, I think it has nothing to do with gold sector, but I just want to ask concerning about the Mineral Commission.
Oh, please.
Okay.
Bemena yapon. Unko wonya mienu. Aye, yeda nyamiasi wonya mienu.
Last question. Concerning, I think some years back, Obama came to Ghana and made mention some few advice that before Ghana we can achieve our goals, we need to sanitize our government institutions. Are we doing it? Or what's going on?
Anyway, this morning I had a conference. I alluded to the fact that he is going to give the president free of charge to farmers, and they were coming for him. With the private sector, I don't know what is happening because some farmers say they are buying it. It's available now because some time ago, though they were getting it for free, they were not getting it for the president. But the president will be assuring them that when he comes back to power, he's going to give them free of charge. What are they going to do at the federal fund? And then he did mention the fact that now we don't have, sorry, my name is not research in African services. You did mention that scholarships are not going to give the SS undergraduate because government is giving them free education. Now, why don't they invest in because are you going to give them scholarship as well as doing the SS graduates or at the end of this?
Another question.
Good afternoon. My name is Marco Wilson. I work at Joy FM. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned that the audit reports in the cocoa growth sector is public. Did you mention something like that? Because I think I heard you say it's public.
I said knowledge of it is public.
Knowledge of it is public.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to find out. Because since 2017...
That was the first question, so it will be dealt with.
Yes, but I want to find out who prepared the reports and how much did we pay the consultants? And lastly, the report states clearly that there were ghost projects which the NDC administration said that they had awarded to some contractors. Thank you.
Okay. I will take the scholarships and the Obama sanitizer question. It was very clear in what I said that the component of support to second cycle, free SHS. Microphone's not coming. Everybody has it now. So I will answer as to the best of my ability two of the questions. And the first is to do with the scholarships. And I think I was very clear when I stated that scholarships to second cycle, that is secondary school level, are now going to be diverted into school buildings at basic level because of free SHS. There was no mention of tertiary level. So free SHS per the cocoa industry will have produced a beneficial output at basic level because more basic schools will be built where there are gaps between Cocoa Board, GES, as well as other programs at tertiary level being carried out between the University of Ghana and these same institutions. There is now a pool of money that can be used to explore these other options. Obama said sanitize institutions. I don't know whether this is in reference to Cocoa Board or otherwise, but if it's in reference to Cocoa, we are indeed sanitizing Cocoa Board. From all the programs I've listed here, in particular, the care and attention being afforded the cocoa farmer where it hits the most, which is farm care. The biggest threat to a farm is pests and diseases. So if pests and diseases are being eliminated, and the only way to get rid of akate is to kill the trees and throw them away. So you can imagine how an individual farmer will feel getting rid of a tree that they have planted and taken care of and looked after. Now government takes that burden off you, gives you money, cuts the dead trees out, replants the old ones with its own labor, takes care of the farm for 2 years and makes sure that everything is ship-shape, even as you continue with government going forward. And in that period, you get your inputs, you get your chemicals, you get your pruning and slasher, modernized, simple technology pruner and slashers, which reduce the energy that you invest in the farm. And then all of this adds up to increased output because you now have hand pollination, a special process that will make your farm move from 20 pots to 300 pots on average, same farm. I haven't calculated the percentage level. It must be in the thousands of percentages in improvement. This is what a farmer wants. And so you have a retooled, refurbished cocoa board, which is delivering a service a farmer wants. On top of all that, we've increased the price. We have also brought in the living income differential, an innovation that is and has never happened on the African continent. I'll have the Chief Executive answer the few other questions.
Before I take the questions, my director made a presentation in Twi, and I just want to add a few things to that. In Twi, the cocoa swelling shoot viral disease, CSSVD, is cocoa asasambro yare. Cocoa asasambro yare. And capsid is cocoa akate. So we have a difference there between cocoa akate and then cocoa asambro yare. Now, is the cocoa akate, that is the capsid, that actually gingered the early or spring spraying. What we have noticed is that around April, March, April, we have the highest temperatures in this country. And that's the time you have eggs of insects hatching. So you have the caterpillars coming up. So what we did was just to introduce mass spraying around that time, April, May, just to knock, off the caterpillars. And we call them anomies. And it is these anomies, that is the caterpillar form of the capsid, that I believe NDC have referred in their manifesto as fall armyworm. We don't have fall armyworms on cocoa. Fall armyworms eat grass. They are grass eaters. And therefore, any cultivated grass is what fall armyworms will eat. Now, when you take the anomies, those of you who come from cocoa areas, they are the Esan type. The color is green, yellowish. That is Esan. And Esan is different from the fall armyworm. Esan doesn't, Esan, yes, will be eating the flashes of the cocoa leaves, young cocoa leaves. But fall armyworms, they eat other grass, sugarcane leaves, maize leaves, sorghum leaves, millet leaves. In short, they are grass eaters. And to me, it's a bit embarrassing, to see in a manifesto of such, high profile, to have fall armyworms being recorded as going to be treated on cocoa farms. It's very, very strange. Now to the question. The first one has to do with the review report. What I've been always referred to as an audit report is a review report. It's a review. Of course, there was some engineering audit. Essentially, it was a review of the